nice about things.
So we're setting the tone already by throwing some shade.
Absolutely.
Nice.
Jean-Lee over there is throwing some shade.
Yes!
So thank you all for coming to our panel. I know it is 11:30 on a Saturday at Kitacon, and that therefore might not have been the best time to have a panel, but I really appreciate all of you for making the effort to wake up, slap your cosplays on, and come and join us for this. It really is appreciated. So this is a panel that we ran at MCM back in May, which was a really great experience. We had a fantastic discussion with everyone there, and it definitely felt like it needed to be run at different types of events, because the whole idea of the diversity cosplay panel is to make sure that you are getting as much discourse going as possible, and you're not only going to get that running at one type of event. This is very much a discussion-based panel, so we're not going to sit here and talk to you about what we think diversity cosplay is. We want it to be open discussion, so bringing up questions, ideas, comments, things that you guys want to talk about as well is really, really key. Before we do that, I'm going to introduce, well, you guys are going to introduce yourselves, our wonderful, wonderful panelists. Do you not want to go? You don't have to. Marion, you can go first.
Hello, I'm Marion. Cereselcosplay. I do most of my things as well as this one over here. Yeah, nice to meet you.
I'm Helen, aka Miss Moon Cosplay, and I do most of my cosplays a duo with Rosa, who's the Shira over there. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Charlie, also known as streetangelcosplay, also known as the chairwoman of Cosplay.
Plug in there.
I think from Manami, we might be the only other con with a female chair.
Hell yeah.
So yeah, I've been cosplaying for over a decade. I was on the panel at May Expo, which was a really lovely experience, and thank you so much for having me back. So yeah, nice to see you all.
My name is teshouu on Instagram, on socials. I'm not costing any duos or anyone. Well, I do know from Panellists, and I do have a band, but I don't know what they are. It's all fun,
Just a lost cosplayer somewhere. So yeah, at this point, I'd like to open the floor up to you guys. Is there anything you guys would like to discuss, questions you'd like to ask, anything like that? All right, there we go.
You introduce yourself.
I didn't introduce myself. True. Normally, I just stand to the side and run around and get people to ask questions. I'm not normally on the panel. I'm Tabby, and I like starting fights. Nice to meet you.
You like finishing?
I like finishing fights. Yeah, thank you. First question. Does anyone have anything that they'd like to bring up topic-wise? I was really biased by anything we want to mention. Oh, we got the doors shut on us.
I mean, do we want to start talking about sort of what we kind of represent on the panel to kind of get a conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds like a good start. Take it away.
Okay, hi, so yeah, I'm Charlie, and I'm here to sort of talk about maybe the plus size cosplay experience, and I've been plus size for the majority of my adult life, and that's come with various challenges based on how people perceive me as a person, as a personality, whether or not I'm aesthetic enough for the things that I choose to do, whether I have any right to do the things that I do, and various other challenges such as I have to pattern things differently, I can't buy costumes, and it affects a lot of how I choose to cosplay and who I choose to interact with.
Hi, I guess, so I should possibly represent the fact that it's more like, I think minorities in cosplay and how you can actually do a cosplay, even though, say, the reference material has been depicted as maybe something that's a lighter scale. You don't feel that you can join in because of your acting minority. It's more representation of the character, not the actual physical look. I think this is one of them.
Hello, yeah, I'm also a person of colour, of course, and I'm Muslim, so I have to do a lot of modesty adaptations to my costumes. And And for the longest time, because a lot of the characters I liked were white, I just didn't cosplay because I was just like, oh, I look shit. Like, I know that's not true anymore, but at the time it really felt like a barrier. So yeah, I need to talk about that.
Yeah, so I have autism, and part of that has meant that I have sensory sensitivities to certain fabrics and stuff. So I also don't buy cosplays because polyester makes me want to die and pull my skin off. So I also sometimes have issues with con environments because too loud, too noisy, too many people. And I also have congenital shortening of the calf muscles, which means I can't stand for more than 20 minutes. So that's also fun in certain con environments where there's not enough seating.
Yeah, definitely. My purpose for wanting to sit on this panel is actually to help talk about issues of accessibility and conventions, not only for visible disabilities, but also for invisible disabilities. For instance, most cons, it's really difficult to find where the bathrooms are. And that is something that is really important to me. So it's kind of one of those things of not only just con environments, but also cosplays. At some point there are issues where sorry, I'm talking about bathrooms, but if you have to go, you have to go. And sometimes for costumes, it's just not the easiest to actually take off to go to the bathroom in. So really kind of addressing those issues that you might not necessarily think of. Yeah, I think one thing that's come up as a thread for everyone here is the amount of modifications and extra work that you have to do if you are not, a size 8 to 10, to actually make costumes work for you. And I was wondering if anyone on the panel will be able to talk a bit more about that.
So it'll always depend on the costume that I'm making. I tend to prefer going for fabrics that have some semblance of stretch, just because my body will fluctuate. It'll go, for 1 week a month it will go up by 5 pounds. She hurries, or woo. And so I'll have to be able to sort of mitigate for that. And when because I'm quite large chested as well, when I'm having to make anything that is structured, it's trying to find a way to place that means I can breathe, that the costume operates the way that it should, and also trying to get the proportions right, because often I'm cosplaying characters that are drawn even more extremely than Barbie, and whilst the lines are beautiful on that costume, when you can draw it on that figure and you can just pick how you want to draw it based on what scene you're animating, it doesn't work in real life. So it's trying to often get those shapes so that they actually look flattering on a human being, whilst also echoing what they're trying to be from, and also trying, in the nicest way, to de-size me a little bit, rather than having to scale everything up. There's definitely a sense of, sort of masquerading sometimes, is trying to go, it's not as bad as you might think, honest.
Yeah, so if anyone is familiar with the She-Ra reboot, they'll know that I've edited this cosplay quite a bit for comfort. Part of it was because I looked at the original thing and I was like, if I make that for my body size, I'm going to look so pregnant that it's not going to be funny. But yeah, because I also have the problem of large chest, no shoulders. So I'm always having to resize things. I've just been trying to steer away from doing anything that involves tailoring. So kudos on you for doing that, because it just makes me cry. I'm not a good enough seamstress for that. If anything, it's made me have to learn to become a better seamstress, because I either only cosplay stuff that I can make in Jersey, or I learned to become a better seamstress because it just can't find anything to fit my shape.
I have the same issue of can't buy for different reasons, just because of modesty and stuff. So I don't think, even the thought of buying, I think I bought my first ever costume, which was just I found the one Miku outfit, which was somewhat modest, and bought it, right? So that was my first ever costume, and since then everything I've ever made, I've always made it myself, because I just make the skirt longer, I add sleeves, I do all that kind of thing. So yeah, just the idea of actually being able to buy something and just wear it is well.
You have been able to in your cousin cosplay was more
I can now because of certain designs in certain series, and also having services to change it really. So the cousin was born, but also the model that was wearing the cousin had designed, it all looked. So in Genshin, his actual outfit is quite like all the way up here, and he's got like this big scarf that like covers it. But when the cosplay came, it was kind of like a V-neck that went down there, and that wasn't on their pictures, it wasn't on his design, and I was like, thanks man, thanks guys. So I had to do a lot of adaptations even after getting one that I thought would be nice. So
I think the only thing I'd add to that conversation is it's all very well to talk about how hard it is to make a costume for us, or for us to wear that one cosplay. But one of the lovely things about cosplay is being able to do it with your friends and participate in groups. That becomes impossible because you can buy cosplays for £30 to £100 based on what it is. That's not what it costs to make the equivalent. So if your friends all want to do cosplay and they have to match, it's school jackets, it's Sailor Scouts, whatever it is that has that semblance of matchy, and they all want to buy it because that's their budget and they can all fit and that's wonderful for them and I wouldn't take it from them. I can't do it with them because it will stand out, I can't match it, and it breaks your heart. That's the other thing is like it's, you know, everything costs more, participating is harder. And so then you either have to convert everyone to making, and then you have people who can't make and they participate in cosplay by buying it or commissioning it, and that's fine. But again, it's that inaccessibility that comes from having to make those adjustments.
And I guess the slight good news is that it does seem like more and more shops you can buy cosplay from are trying to push for custom sizing. I know on AliExpress as well, a lot of the places you can custom size, but again, it costs more to custom size, and that is still the only downside, is that if you are not a sewer and you want to participate with your friends, you still are not working at the same budget as them, so it's nice that the opportunity is there, but it's still a specifically limited opportunity based on the shops that are offering it, and also the fact that you are, in some instances, almost paying double for basically the same thing. It's a dubious success rate on my customers.
I've also had the issue of someone who, part of the reason why I'm always hesitant to buy stuff online is I'm like, if I don't like the feel of the fabric, I'm not going to be able to wear it. I buy as much of my fabric as I can from physical shops. So when I'm looking at those AliExpress stores, I'm looking at them like, is that going to be, even if I don't know if I can trust the listing for what they say the fabric percentages are, I'm like, how much of that is going to be cheap polyester that I know is going to rip me out and stuff? Is it going to have itchy labels that I can't get at? And how much of that am I going to be able to fix by, I don't know, putting a lining in or something? At which point I'm basically making the costume again, but inside out. So
that's happened a little bit with my Kaya, because I bought a Kaya costume, and then, so I have a similar issue with fabrics, but not the same, but it's the stretch. Yeah, how like revealing is this fabric going to be? Is it going to fall? Is it going to be like right? So I have a similar kind of thing, and like half of my Kaya costume, I'm just replacing it all because it can't do it. So.
It's fine. I don't have anything to add to this discussion.
Just in case.
No, I agree with everyone's points there. When it comes to sizing of clothes sizing in general isn't quite accessible anyway. If accessible to clothing was a bit more mainstream, then I think suppliers that make cosplayers would then follow that trend, because they know that if bigger retailers and actually are more accessible with their clothing and what they show, then it kind of filters down to more of a niche market. I think that's also something we have to look at, because remember, cosplay is also still quite niche compared to like a wide audience. So I think it starts big and it becomes small, but it's progressive. So these conversations are what makes it progressive. So this is the step in the right direction.
Yeah, my favorite thing that came up recently was Doki Doki, the costume suppliers kept getting a lot of negative commentary for how difficult their cosplays were to put on. And so they made a video basically showing step by step how to put one of their costumes on, and people were like, oh, who are the weirdos who need a step by step of how to put a costume on? But it's the same thing as but also people who have physical disability, right? Some of those ties and pins that you have to put in, they're around your back. Like we can stand there and we can do those motions, but if you have limited mobility, those costumes become impossible to put on, and that's kind of the next step. It's getting the costumes to be accessible for a range of body types, for a range of fabrics, but then also making it accessible for people who have certain mobility issues that might cause them to not be able to put something that's ridiculously complicated on. And having the fact that everyone complained enough to the point where they were making those videos shows that what we talk about online, what we talk about at conventions, word of mouth of, oh, go to this supplier because they do this instead of this other one, does actually have an impact on how these people are marketing what they are selling to people. And that's really, really important. Is that yes, sometimes bitching is a fantastic tool to get what you want. Does anyone have any questions for our, or like a discussion point that they'd like to bring up before we just continue to talk after you? Topics that you'd like to bring up? Go for it.
So I've been, if you know the character from teshouu, yes. Yes. So I've been cosplaying for a fair few years now, and initially when I first started cosplaying, I actually wanted to do lots of big armor builds and normally things to cover myself, because actually I never felt confident to cosplay anything that showed my face, because I just thought that no one would recognize it just because I had like darker skin. So I just thought if I cover myself, like wear a suit, like Monster Hunter Valora, Monster Hunter armor, I would cover myself, and that would mean people would recognize it because they're not judging me based on the color of my skin for the character, but more of the actual costume and stuff. But it's been years and stuff, and I always had like issues with how I saw myself, perceived myself with these kind of things. But by meeting good people, everyone's time here, and friends, you just become more confident with how it's actually very acceptable to cosplay anything you want. And I said it earlier, it's more about cosplaying the character you see as opposed to how they look. You may recreate the clothing and the outfit, but it's the character that you need. So one of my favorite cosplays that I've done a few times now is I like Zenitsu on Demon Slayer, and it doesn't stop me the fact that Zenitsu is obviously a lighter skin from me, because it's the character I appreciate and want to do. And I saw that with people when I was at the other convention. People actually see more the character and not so much the skin color. And I think it means it's going in the right direction, because how I felt from like 5, 6 years ago to now with it, I think it's getting somewhere. And I think personally that's how I feel about it. Anyone wants to jump on or disagree?
I'm definitely not going to disagree on a few videos.
I mean, I can. So I have a cosplay that I would absolutely love to do, but I'm very hesitant to do it. There's a movie, it was made by Blue Sky Studios in Ice Age, called Epic. Sorry, I love Epic. It's one of my favorite films. Sorry, I'm sorry. I'm glad someone knows this. Me and my niche animation interests. I really want to cosplay
Beyonce.
Yeah.
You should be Beyonce. You should.
Her dresses, they're freaking amazing.
I suit you so well. I will cosplay this with you. I will. I'll do it. I'll be Ronin. I'll do it. Like I don't care.
Because I love to watch Sam to do Ronin, because he's like huge and we do it.
Whatever. We'll work it out.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. I'll do Beyonce and you do White Boy. I'll balance it out. I'm gonna balance it out.
Replace me as well.
I'll make it okay. But this is my question, right? So, black washes me out. When I have absolute black hair, dark around me instead, just to, so I don't look like I'm ill. And so I was thinking, well, okay, maybe I can do it that way so that it's kind of bringing my colouring to that character. But I sit there and I just get so uncomfortable with the idea of doing it because I just worry that, because especially for being respectful of the fact that being a POC cosplayer, the backlash, and I've seen it for years, like how that black Sailor Venus cosplayer kept being brought up for years and years and years, like, oh, this black Sailor Venus, what black Sailor Venus? Like, it's just a Sailor Venus cosplayer. She's nothing. But it's that whole thing of like, am I stepping into a space that probably on the balance of things, there's a lot of other things that I can cosplay. So that's open to thoughts. Not in the sense that, I need the room to vindicate my decision, but just as a point kind of in that direction.
We've been talking about this a lot at 2 a.m. last night.
We were.
Because of the new Zoomer design. I'm going to just let you go off here.
No, that's a good idea. Right.
I think the bottom line, I will give it TLDR before somebody goes off on one. I think the TLDR is whatever you're doing it respectfully. Who cares, it's fine. Like costumes, like Tish was saying, costumes are about representing characters that you love, and that's all it is. It's all it comes down to. It's not like you're going to be putting on something that is, culturally important in somewhere with no understanding and just, that's different. I think it's not the same thing to just appreciate characters who's not your skin tone and cosplaying. I don't think that's the same.
Thank you, that helped me out of my thoughts. Right, so critical thinking is a beautiful skill. And considering that our government has cut funding to humanities, to the arts, and to basically every form of education, it is not a skill that is being taught as it should be. But it is a very, very useful skill. Critical thinking and research and being able to use citations and resources appropriately. Yes, there are cases where there are levels of cosplay which involve cultural appropriation. For instance, my absolute favorite anime of all time, Shaman King. Bloody love Shaman King. It's not appropriate to walk around with a Native American headdress on simply because you are mega appreciating Shaman King.
Oh, an Italian cosplay.
Oh! We'll get to that in a second.
I'm story about Italian cosplayers.
So there are instances for things like cultural appropriation in cosplay, which yes are definitely a no-no. For instance, blackface is a no-no. Thank you. Same wavelength. Native American headdress is cultural appropriation. However, for the most part, research will show you whether or not what you are doing is a problem. Wearing a kimono is not cultural appropriation. If you are wearing a wedding kimono or a coming-of-age outfit, why are you doing that? And also, yes, that's verging into the area of you are taking something from a specific cultural environment and using it in an environment where it is not appropriate. And the same is true for everything. You wouldn't wear a quinceañera dress if you're not going to a quinceañera.
Question on that. When you say wedding kimono, do you mean cosplaying as a character that wears a wedding kimono in the context of the show, or just wearing a wedding kimono?
Just wearing a wedding kimono. Right. There are limits, but realistically, as long as you are within the bounds of I have researched this and I understand that what I am doing is okay within that cultural realm, it is not cultural appropriation. And again, it's just a case of research. It's just a case of thinking about it. The thing you have to remember is that regardless of what you do, people on the internet will always say you are wrong. It doesn't matter. And also, those people don't matter. It's all about, we're all learning, right? We're all coming from a position where we have a set amount of knowledge and we will come to meet other people or to find other information which will change our knowledge. And as long as we are amenable to those changes, making sure that the information that we are getting from someone or getting from a source is reliable and well researched and has actual citations, it is not a problem to then change our opinions on things. And that's a key thing. I always think of when Legend of Korra came out, and I was living in America at the time, and basically if you were a white person and you cosplayed Korra and put your pictures on Tumblr, everyone was just after you. And it's like, okay, yes, obviously there are elements of currently living cultures in the Avatar universe. However, to say that Korra's outfit is cultural appropriation is probably going a bit too far. It's using aesthetics that are not linked to any specific cultural environment which you are separating from it, and that is the key. At least in my opinion, that's the key, and I'm just one person.
That brings up an interesting question. No, okay, so we know that the Avatar writers did a lot of research in creating their characters. So, you can say, right, this is fantasy fiction that takes clear reference from. What about similar to problematic reference, or for example, the Belle movie? There was all the conversation about her face paint and the line over the nose, and that was very evocative of is it Native American or were they from Australian tribes?
Oh, yeah, it was Native American.
Native American, yeah. Where it was very evocative of traditional face paint for them. There was a conversation asking cosplayers not to recreate the face paint in that particular way because it had been taken out of context and been made into an aesthetic. So, when we're talking about researching characters and the origins of their aesthetic, it's becoming more conscientious about what we're choosing to cosplay and represent.
Yeah, I mean, this is the same conversation as like the It's the same conversation. You can cosplay that character without the swastika. You can cosplay that without the things that people love.
Italian flashbacks.
Would you like to talk about your Italian flashbacks, or would you like to
I
simmer?
probably should. No, but I probably should because, sorry, I'll talk into a microphone. That'll be better than me just yelling at you guys.
Alright.
Yeah, God, this feels like I'm at an Alcoholics Anonymous.
Italian cosplayers.
My name is Helen, I used to cosplay Italian. I feel like so many years back, I want to say it was like 2011, 2012, there was a certain Germany and Prussia cosplayer that decided to carry around a certain flag that is not good and do certain arm gestures that are not good. And photographed and filmed this and posted it all over social media. And after that, a lot of the Italian fandom imploded, as you can probably imagine. Yeah. The problem is that because a lot of the show is, as much as the premise of the show is like, oh, it's just countries, it's like, any time in history, but a lot of the comic is based in World War II. And a lot of, the main, three of the main characters, four maybe, are all, on the side that didn't win. The problem is that, as much as I feel like the designs as they're drawn are not exact copies of military uniforms, they're very similar. So there's a lot of issues of people buying military surplus and also people not sure where to draw the line between how much of this can I keep before it becomes a costume that I do not want to be seen in public in. Which I don't know if we ever solved that, to be honest. I think most people just moved on to, I'm just going to do them for other time periods.
It's a critical thinking thing again, right? And there is, it's all a grey area, right? And that's why we can have panels like this, because we can't sit here and go, this is right, this is, in some cases we can. But for the most part, it's about discussions. Sorry, no, you're good. I was going to say, there's been a recent example of, not dissimilar, who has seen Spy X Family?
Yeah.
Oh,
I haven't, but I know exactly what you're about to
yeah,
say.
I know where this is going.
So, there's a character. So, for those that aren't aware, Spy X Family, the premise is, here's an assassin, here's a spy, they don't, it's Mr. and Mrs. Smith type thing, they don't know about each other's other history, and they're in a fake marriage. And all the other characters are some sort of thing in that vein. And the assassin's younger brother is in the secret police, which is a little bit not funny. And so people have cosplayed him on TikTok and the backlash has been severe. Because again, it's like what we're talking about, where it's looking at the context of the thing and going, that's not really far enough removed for this to really be okay. And it's a shame because in an ideal world, you would be able to have separation of fiction and reality. But in 2022, when we have neo-Nazis in government, that we don't have that luxury, right? It's just not a luxury we have anywhere in the world. It's not an England-specific problem.
Authors funding anti-terror.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're right. So yeah, there's all these things that we could do in an ideal environment. And this isn't, I should say, this isn't just something that is a conversation that's happening in cosplay. You're sitting there going, wow, we're really going for it, trying to police this. I am a reenactor, and this year, because of the war in Ukraine, or I should say the invasion, I should talk about it in the correct terminology, all World War II events have been cancelled. Every single World War II event in the UK has either gone ahead with extremely small numbers or have actually just not gone ahead because it's just not, it's not appropriate, right? It's not the time to be doing these things. And multi-period events that have World War II reenactors, obviously World War II reenactors need someone to fight. So there are people who will have like excess kit in order to portray that because it's historical. No one's brought it out. Not a single person is walking around reenacting events with that kit right now because it's just, it's not the dream. It's really not the dream.
It's not a favorite thing. I think it's important to remember as well that art can take its life in its art. Like, cosplay doesn't exist in some world and the rest of the world doesn't. Right? Like, whatever you do in this space, it's something you're doing in the community that is part of society, right? So, like, it's not okay just because it's fictional. Like, art is a part of society and life. So, it's important to do something about it. But also, like, circling back a little bit to what you were saying about not feeling comfortable in that epic costume, I think it's also important to remember that how we interact with that media is then going to influence what we really see in the future, right? So if people are avoiding appreciating characters that aren't from white cultures just because they don't feel comfortable doing that, what's that going to look like for the people who are making them? They're going to think, oh well, characters aren't white, aren't popular, they don't so much, we're not going to make them, right? So I think it's important to still just be respectful and appreciative of those cultures and characters because otherwise you don't get them, right?
That's a really good point. Unless anyone else had anything else to say on that topic, I wanted to circle back to something that you said. That's okay. I wanted to circle back to the idea of partially seeing yourself represented in media, but also seeing yourself represented at conventions in a way that makes you go, yeah, it doesn't matter what I cosplay, right? So you were talking about how you went from wearing masked cosplays when you realised, you thought it doesn't matter who am I speaking to, just people doing costumes, to realising that actually you can just cosplay whatever you want and people are looking at the character. Do you think that was that like a you decision, or was it something you were seeing in conventions that helped you change that? Because I think that's an interesting point to bring up, is how does representation in the convention sphere actually maybe help broach that gap of diversity?
I think it sort of goes both ways, as a you decision and also a community decision. Obviously, it takes self-courage to sometimes go do something or step into an area that you're not comfortable with. Because, again, when we do cosplay, social media is also quite a big thing, and we try not to be judged, but we do get judged, and those opinions can affect us or make you think, should I cosplay something like this, or can I cosplay something like this? So it goes both ways. It's obviously it's community things. I've luckily been able to see and meet people that are very open to the ideas of this, and then it's also a you decision, because you have to sometimes also get through a barrier to kind of get through these steps. But I think it goes hand in hand. It's not I wouldn't say that it's changed overnight, but I like to say it's getting better, but when I say it's getting better, it's sort of like when the graph on a line chart goes down, it kind of goes up. It's not at the top, but it's just gone up a bit. But you could politically say it's going up, to say it's going up, but it's still like down there. If that makes sense?
I had the same thing, right, where for the longest time I even cosplay characters who were the same thing or just found a way to cover my face and something. For me, it was actually this one who sort of turned around and went, what do you mean? So that was actually a turning point for me. But that in and of itself, right, it was somebody who I respect as a creator turning around and saying, don't laugh. Turning around and saying to me, no, that's fine, you know, who cares? That which I think serves a similar sort of purpose as seeing it represented in a wider community. Because then also seeing the Johnny cosplayers and stuff was another thing that kind of made me go, okay, yeah, I can do this. I agree with you that it seems slightly less, like I feel less self-conscious than I would have 5-6 years ago being in whatever costume. I think it's improving in that sense, like in terms of like actually real life in a community. I don't think it's improving in the wider sense, like even at this convention, what the cosplay judges do see and then we complain about one person who's not seen onto the panel, right? Like, you know, people who are considered good cosplayers, I don't think that's changing fast enough. I don't know if that's a controversial take or not.
It's not, because you look at, I mean, let's look at the conventions that have happened this year. I mean, out of all the conventions we've been to, I can't think of anyone that has had a diverse judging panel other than the one we were at 2 weeks ago because we ran it. It's a case of, it is a case of wanting to see more of it in the cosplay community, but what roles do we need to see more diversity in order to keep promoting it? Is it a panelist discussion? Is it a cosplay judge and guest discussion? Is it an organizer discussion, like what you were saying about being one of the only female chairs for an anime convention in the country? That's really important.
I will add to that we have our cosplay officer, who is our trans mask, and we have who is amazing, I love you. We have Rick, who is a cis man, but he's lovely. He's lovely, yeah. We've got Lizzie, who has ADHD. I'm not going to speak for what Jane has, I can't remember off the top of my head and do not want to misquote it. So when I was forming that committee, I very deliberately wanted to have a selection of people that would cover as many bases as possible to give someone that they felt they could approach who had a similar kind of experience, because a lot of the committees are heavily male dominated. Certain age groups, aesthetics, whatever it is, and it's just trying to bridge that gap a little bit better. Sorry, didn't mean to shamelessly plug, carry on.
No, you are. Shamelessly plug away.
Sorry, Kai?
That's what I am open in the cosplay community. I wasn't out. That's why I am open. Just want to say that in case anyone else assumed that I wasn't open.
I was just going to say that it's not just that, as you were saying, it's not just a cosplay thing. I know that when I'm not dressed like this, I do a lot of D&D, and that's also, because of the way D&D works, you tend to get things, you get some tables that are lovely and diverse and stuff, and then you get some tables that are the same dirty white men drowning in their neck beers and beer. So, I used to, before the play, run a table in a local board gaming cafe. I was the only girl running a table, and I know I had multiple women come to the cafe and then specifically say, can I play on her table? Because they didn't trust playing with a man they didn't know. And I think it's really important that committees reflect this in the same way, because I know that certainly there are some issues I've had at conventions. I'd be very hesitant to go to someone who was male presenting or someone who had previously seemed very flippant about issues beforehand. I want to try and find someone like you, like, would get it on some level.
There's a question. Just very quickly, this is just reminding me again about art intakes. Like, this is a really wide problem, right? Because I have the same thing where I do a lot of like participation within astrophysics, and it's exactly the same. We get like one woman. Like, you get a lot of people doing the widely participation work, or people like me, because they're the ones who can, right? But it's all 5 female and or POC people who are doing that work, right? Yeah. It's the same thing in cosplay.
Do you have a question?
Oh, sorry, yeah.
That's okay.
I didn't know if it was open questions or
No, it is
well,
open to questions.
oh,
We want
lovely.
people to ask questions.
Oh, lovely,
Please,
yeah, sorry.
Ask questions.
You're doing a very bad job of asking us questions, audience. Do that.
So, I've been going to conventions and cosplays, doing cosplay for about like 10 years now, like for quite a while. And I've seen, like, throughout those 10 years, like, the sphere of people that are at those conventions and, like, going to them, it's definitely becoming, like, more diverse, like, people who are, like, definitely, like, in the minority are able to, like, come more, feel like, better going into conventions as well, too. However, I still find it whenever because I look at like lots of like cosplay music videos, like and stuff too. I still find it very white dominated and very like lacking in that way too as well. Like even across like the board for like most of the UK cons and panels, like you will just find just majority white people as well too. I was just wondering if you guys have any thoughts on like how that could be improved upon and how like we would feel more sort of like represented in going forward in that situation, how to tackle it basically.
Yeah, so we've talked about this a bit before. I think it's a cyclic problem, right? It's a never-ending cycle kind of thing where you've got the representation building at cons now, but then you've got biases both on social media and on like in people's aesthetic, right? The things that photographers want to shoot isn't, it's things that they look at and they go, that looks like something I want to take a picture of. And that's not something you can police, right? Because they're artists at the end of the day and they shoot what they want to shoot. But a lot of the time, and a lot of photographers mean, like open whatever photographers you're following on Instagram, scroll down their feed and find how many of those pictures are going to be of diverse cosplayers, right? And then obviously if the only pictures you're seeing on social media are of those kinds of cosplayers, and they're the only ones who are being followers, and then they're the only ones who are getting invited to events, because events are doing things with followers now. And then it just keeps going like that, then yeah, it just doesn't end. Because then you're not seeing those cosplayers anywhere on social media, because they're not popular enough, so they don't come on the feed. And then the photographers' views aren't changing either, because they're not seeing those people, so that doesn't look like cosplay to them when they see it. They see,
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, with what Tessa said, it's like maybe people that don't see themselves in like media, they tend not to. I feel like maybe I shouldn't go for it unless they there's more people now that are eventually coming to cosplay those people. But yeah, as you said, yeah, it's slowly coming about. But and also I personally notice in like photography and like figure like circles, it's mostly male dominated. It's like there are slowly like the females are coming into the hobby more, but it's slowly changing as well. Personally, I've seen some, but yeah, Tesh.
I was just going to kind of marry something about the whole social media, like social media clout, basically, where social media is the new influence, it's currency, isn't it? So it's what you have is what you can do and you can influence. And it's also about like, it's on our feeds, it's the algorithm, it's what we see. So you might not see diverse cosplay in your TikToks or Instagram, whichever social media platform you use, and that then develops the way we think and perceive, thank you, what we see cosplay should be, and that can have a knock-on effect when we're going into reality. Because then you go, I've seen only 9 people cosplay this way and only 1 person cosplay this way, so what do I do? and how do I feel about it, and then when it comes to reality, like, how do you follow through with that? But yeah, and this was
Yeah, because that feeds into the circle, right?
Yeah.
Because the one part of the circle I forgot to mention was the fact that when cosplayers end up see diverse cosplayers on their feed because their photos are being taken, because etc., then they don't want to cosplay it, and then you get less of that.
Just bringing an event, current event that's kind of reflecting all of this conversation. So TikTok has apparently changed its algorithm again, as it does. As far as I understand it, it's trying to sort people into categories that will push those categories behind the scenes. And cosplay only is notoriously difficult to categorize because what are you? Are you comedians? Are you, like, in that sense, like what genre do you fit into? Most of us will say that we cross many genres in terms of the content that we create. But cosplay content creators are finding that their reach is tanking and they don't know what to do. And so on TikTok there's what's called a repost feature, which is kind of like reposting someone to Instagram stories, that kind of thing. And there was a movement to say, oh well, you know, we'll all boost each other. We will force TikTok to listen by creating this inorganic reach. And that lasted for about a week. And then now the narrative that I'm seeing is, oh, this is only happening to white cosplayers, you're not boosting POC cosplayers, plus-size cosplayers, etc. And whilst that's also success bias again that we've already been talking about, in the sense that if those are not coming up on your feed, of course you're not going to be able to repost them, because that is then an extra step. You have to then go looking for them. And then if nobody labels themselves that way with a hashtag, etc., how findable are you in that respect? But there was also another interesting conversation happening about who deserves to have their reach extended in this manner. And that conversation was then trending towards, well, if you know you're white and you are generically pretty, that you have a success, you have a natural success, you're part of the most successful group, that you don't need our help. You're already big enough. And that was really interesting because it was like, it took what was supposed to be a wholesome message movement, and it was starting to then pick who deserved it more. And whilst it's not wrong to say that, you know, the white and the skinny and the pretty are the most successful, we know that, and they're the most photographed, then they've got the most followers and the most endorsed, etc. Do we start picking and choosing when we're going to do actions like that?
I think that there is. I'm really glad you brought this point up because it is a very cyclical and kind of doom scrolling discussion of you don't see it, doesn't get picture taken, so on and so forth. But there is something that everyone in this room is actually capable of doing in order to prevent this from happening. Over lockdown, I went through my Instagram and I unfollowed and stopped working with every single photographer who I had to scroll past 100 posts to find any kind of diversity with them. I won't shoot with them anymore, I won't book them, that's the end of it. And I go out of my way to work with photographers who I know don't do this, who I look at their Instagram feed and I go, this is someone who's taking pictures of people because they like the costume. And to go out of my way to promote those photographers so that there's a confidence boost, they take more pictures, and also they get more followers, so more followers can see their work. And you can all do that. You can all go on your Instagrams right now and choose which photographers you want to support. Now, if you are a photographer, this is something to think about. When you look at your photos after a convention, are you seeing photos that you took because you liked the costume, or are you seeing photos that you took that kind of all seem to be the exact same person, just with slightly different facial features? And again, there's nothing we can do to police you. We can't go up to you and go, hey, you need to take pictures of more POC cosplayers, because at the end of the day, it's your work. But it doesn't mean we have to promote you or support you. And that's the key thing. As cosplayers, you can choose to do that. The other thing you can choose to do as cosplayers is to, as was brought up in the TikTok discussion, promote cosplayers that you personally, it doesn't have to be part of a movement, it doesn't have to be part of a group thing, that you personally feel you want to promote. And that could be for any reason. Maybe you think they're really good at sewing, maybe you are like, I think this person deserves more followers. You can promote them because you have social media. Even if you have 50 followers, you have a level of influence over people because they are seeing your Instagram feed. And you can use that to help mitigate these situations where algorithms, where conventions, where people are not taking pictures of the cosplayers and therefore promoting cosplay as a hobby whole, they're promoting it more as, you know, what they want to see in regards to models. The other thing you can do as a cosplayer or a photographer is you can email conventions. We emailed MCM being like, why don't you just have 3 white people as your judges? And, you know, nothing came of it, but if like 20 people sent that email, maybe they'd be like, oh, wow, a lot of people do care about this. It takes 5 seconds to send an email just to be like, hey, I have a concern about this. And you can do that, it costs nothing.
Also, it wasn't that nothing came of it. They did reply and they were very much like, it's finding people, and then asked us to do the work.
Yeah, asked us to do the work for it. And it is a case of you can send those messages. And also, you can talk about panel diversity as well. A lot of conventions now are moving away from wanting to run diversity in cosplay panels to actually just promoting diversity in their panelists. However, you then go to these events that say they promote diversity in their panelists, and there is no diversity in their panelists. And you're sitting there going, this is why we ran diversity in cosplay, thank you very much. You can tell the conventions that. You can talk to them on social media if you don't want to send an email. Then, like, no one's going to hate you. They're not going to rescind your ticket because you sent them an email that they didn't like. You have the power to do that because you are a paying customer going to a convention. So if these things bother you, if you're like, why does my feed look like this? Yeah, okay, I'll come to you in a second. If you're like, why does my feed look like this? Fix it. You have the power to do that. And I just want to end that on a positive note.
Obviously, you guys have spoken about how rights and everything, and people say, I do things, those categories. I'm also physically disabled. I think it's really important that people remember that disabilities are diversity as well, not just the colour of skin or the physical side of it, because if I don't have my stick with me, unless I'm having a bad day, no one's really going to know. So, you know, I have actually been declined photos because of my stick. People don't want the stick in the picture, and it's why I avoided using it for such a long time, despite I needed it so badly. You know, so it's you know, the invisible side of it is also really important as well.
It's a thing that I've heard of a lot from disabled friends who've been like, oh well, I want to cosplay it, but like I feel I need to hide my disability. I know I've heard of people being like, oh, I feel like I have to hide my wheelchair within I need to make this enormous contraption to hide my disability support in so people will think it's a prop and they won't realise that it's because I'm disabled and I need it. Which I think is awful, and that people should just feel free to just have.
I mean, we actually have a friend who does have to use a wheelchair from time to time, and she is honestly genuinely considering doing Professor X because it's a prop that she can use for his wheelchair. Because it's the only one that is going to be inclusive for her. But we are trying to get her to go, hang on a sec, no, you can still do those costumes regardless of whether or not you're in a wheelchair.
Yeah, I mean, I know that my leg issue isn't to the point where I need a visible aid, but I've definitely had the issue where people have not been understanding of the fact that, like, I'm like, you can't make me stand here for an hour, I can't physically do that. It's always difficult because, like, I know as a photographer, whenever I've been photographing people who have a crutch or even just glasses, you know, it's been like, well, the character, you know, I guess it's always up to I feel like it's up to the talk to ask, like, you know, do you want to come off it just for the photo, or do you want to manage without, or do you want me to take a photo of it with? Because, but it is an awkward thing to ask. But I think it's awful that people just like overlook, just because they're like, oh well, you know, that character doesn't have a wheelchair, so therefore I'm not going to take a picture of the person in the wheelchair. To some point it does come down to like properties needing to include more diverse characters, because if there were more characters that existed in wheelchairs, your character would be like, well, it's Professor X or Bust. He's the only wheelchair character that exists that people would recognise.
There is a new Marvel character, she's technically a Spider-Man who has hair loss. She uses her crutches as her wakefulness, which is really cool, you know, it's very interesting for that kind of diversity.
But equally, like, you should be able to cosplay the character that you like, regardless of whether or not they represent you personally down to a T. I think going back to the CMV thing, it is a thing of like, I've had the issue before of like, I go to an event and then I watch the CMV back and I'm like, that's not representative of the event that I went to at all. Like, I didn't see any of those people there. And most of the people that I did see around, like, I guess, like you said, it's a picture they want to pick, but I do think that, and I understand that event planners are like somewhat restricted by like, I have a venue and I can't make the venue be more accessible, but it's, sorry.
For MCM, we asked them about a wheelchair ramp when we ran Thursday Cosplay. They have one. They've always had one. They didn't know.
The security at MCM are notoriously really bad with accessibility and that kind of thing. Same friend in the wheelchair was refused access via the wheelchair ramp. She had to go all the way around and literally her partner had to hulk her wheelchair upstairs because they refused to let her use it.
Yeah, it's terrible. And a lot of I think when it comes to visible and invisible disabilities, a lot of the discussion needs to be centered on education, right? It just needs to be getting the information out there, and also like, I don't know, it's 2022 and we're really like looking at people in wheelchairs and being like, well, you can't cosplay this because you're in a wheelchair. Like, who is doing this? I'd like to have conversations with them personally. Conversations. Because the thing is, this happened at MCM, right? There was a picky caster in a wheelchair who was turned away from one of the Marvel shoots because the guy decided to do it on the stairs.
And it's elitism within those groups as well.
Absolutely. And a lot of it is education, and a lot of it, it's a lot of education and a lot of pushing. When you see these things happening, just turning around and being like, no, like, what do you do? Stop. And unfortunately, like that specific part of this equation requires, I'm not going to say force, let's not start fighting people, but requires more firm dialogue to be had with people who are saying those things and doing those things. That's the only way you're going to change their opinions.
It has the same sort of energy as well as like what Krishna was saying about not feeling comfortable cosplaying certain characters. It's the same thing. You shouldn't have to not feel comfortable just because you're going to have your mobility and you're in a costume. Like, that's not how you should think of it either. And I think that's a culture change that needs to happen. It's slowly happening with like skin color and body diversity and stuff. And I think, that's a change that needs to happen. I'm glad you brought this up because we did have a lot of discussion on this kind of thing at MCM as well.
So on to that topic. So when we came back to conventions October of last year, I went to MCM, and the usual people that would normally go around with My Hero Academia meets weren't in attendance. And I said, well, you know, I'm friends with a lot of My Hero Academia cosplayers. Do you want me to run it? And so they greenlit it, and off I went. Now I haven't run a meet for a long time. Most meets I remember were on the set, and My Hero Academia can be quite a large fandom, and that's a lot of people. And trying to get everyone's faces is very tricky, so we like to be able to use the stairs because we can then level people. But if you're not familiar with MCM, you probably are, but for the sake of those who might not be, there's a couple of steps, there's a flat plateau, and then there's the rest of the steps. And so we were from that flat plateau upwards. And a couple of people approached me in the middle of the shoot and said, oh, can we speak to you afterwards? I was like, yes, of course, is something wrong? Is something happening? Are you okay? And they were like, we'll talk to you afterwards. So we finished up the shoot, and they came back to me and they said, there were a couple of other things that were going on. There was like a lot of background noise, but one of them was saying how I have this mobility aid, I wasn't able to get up the steps to take part in the shoot, do better. Now I was a little bit shocked, and I suspect it was actually MCM staff. But I took that on board and went, right, okay, how can I use this for next time? Because it's not up to them necessarily to come in and tell me how to run it. So next time when I was there in May, and again, standing in for people that normally run it, we did run it on the stairs, but we brought it down to include the ground level. And we opened the shoot by saying, if anyone's got mobility issues, invisible disabilities, standing issues, anything that's going to make it difficult for them to get in and out of the big groups, small groups, etc. Because when you've got a large group of people, you do a lot of different variations of shoot. I said, come tell me, and we will prioritise the things that you want first. Because that was the best way I could see to get the best of both worlds, where you get that visibility in the shoot by being able to use those steps in that staggered area, but also being able to include people as much as possible. And so that's what we did. And there were people who then came up to us afterwards and go, well, thank you so much. I don't normally get to participate so much in these shoots because I'll be in the big group shot at the beginning, and then it'll be so long before it gets around to me that I'll have run out of steam, I'll run out of spoons. So, we can all learn and we can all improve, and there are ways we can make those adjustments.
So we don't have time. I've got 2 quick questions up here, so we're going to do rapid fire round, and then after that, get out of here before the next people come to kick us out.
Just I guess more questions of panelists. How do you personally reconcile the fact that you as a person don't look like the character you're trying to cosplay, you don't look anywhere near them, and in terms of posting pictures on the internet or whatever, the public opinion is that somebody who looks physically more like them is just going to get more likes, and it's just going to be whatever.
Rapid fire.
Rapid fire. Okay. I think the important thing to remember is it's all hobbies are what you make of them, and if looking exactly like that character isn't what's important to you, which it shouldn't be, right? Because they're 2D. You're never going to look exactly like that. Nobody in this world is ever going to look like that. It needs to be about recreating something in its image that you are happy with, and it's not finding that point of view. Sorry, rapid fire.
Rapid fire is, fuck up, I wear what I want, it's not you.
Mental health answer is, you are not a statistic, and the opinion of a bunch of people who are complete strangers to you on the internet is entirely irrelevant.
I was just going to say it's about having fun yourself. In anything you do it because you do it because you want to do it. Don't do it because someone tells you to do it. That's the main thing, I would say.
One more and then we're out.
Hi, so I've never been in cosplay. This is my first ever con actually. And I came here really interested in promoting diversity. I just I kind of wanted to add one more thing to talking about mobility aids, which is that I have a friend who they can stand for 5 minutes, but a lot of the time they're in a wheelchair when they travel, and that's another thing to be really aware of, because you end up in a situation where if you stand up, some people look at you and be like, why are you going around in a wheelchair? And you feel the pressure, because you could go and stand on the steps for 5 minutes. To go and stand on the steps for 5 minutes, even if it would really mess you up. And I guess one other thing I wanted to mention, just because it was over exaggerated slightly, is Miss Marvel, which came out a few months ago, had a person of colour cosplaying as actually a real person with light skin, but a real, in their world, obviously a character for us. And I just thought it was really good in terms of this topic, basically.
I think that is an awesome thing to end on, the fact that we have a brand new Marvel series that actually has exactly what you just said, and literally not a single character in the show said anything about it. So I think that's a great way to end the panel. Obviously, if you have any more questions and you've all come out of your shell and you all love to talk to us, we'll be here all weekend, so you can come find us. Thank you very much for coming to the Diversity Cosplay panel. I can't speak anymore. And I hope